My name is Marta, and I'm here happy to introduce this session on ERC for researchers in humanities. And I have a few announcements, another announcements before proceeding. So in behalf of the Spanish and Spain and Portugal chapter in the MCAA, I would like to announce that there's going to be an ERC proposal reading days. Let me paste the link of it so you can register. So basically in these days, which will be on site, you're going to see on this a link that I'm sending that there's a form that you have to fill. There will be researchers who are planning. It's an interesting event for researchers planning to apply for European Research Council, ERC. And during those reading days, there will be successful fellows reading their applications. So there's a form to fill, but in here you will find all the information. By the way, this is happening in Spain, but after checking online, I've noticed that you have this kind of events all around Europe. So feel free to look for your local and nearest event. And after that, I would like to introduce our speaker today, Flavia Cumoli. Dr. Flavia, she's an historian, and since 2014, which means 10 years, she's been working as a scientific officer within the scientific department at the ERC Executive Agency, where she's coordinating this SH6 panel, which relates to the study of human past. And let me just start her presentation so we can proceed we can leave her the spot. And if there are no other things to add, I'm looking forward to hear from you, Flavia.
Thank you. So thank you everyone for inviting me. So I'm not 100% sure whether the audience is all coming from the social sciences and humanities fields of research, or if it's a broader audience. Anyway, I mean, I think my main aim today is just to present you the ERC granting scheme and give you some tips on how to prepare a successful application. Of course, I know much better the proposals and the evaluation in the humanities, because I've been working, as Marta said, for 10 years at the coordination of the history and archaeology panel. But I also, I mean, you know that the ERC has a one-size-fits-all approach. So whatever I'm saying, I guess it's valid also for other domains and other kinds of applications, because the system is identical. Okay. So if you can move to the next slide, please. Thank you. I'm not sure whether there's a need to talk you about and introduce you to what the ERC is, but I mean, I will briefly introduce you. And then in this second section of my presentation, I will explain you how the ERC expert evaluate research proposals. And then in the third section, I think I'd be the most interesting one for you. We'll give you some tips on how to prepare a successful application. If you can move to the next slide, please. Okay. So about the ERC, it is governed by an independent scientific council with 22 members, including a president. It is linked to the European Commission, but it has full authority and full independence over strategy. It is supported by a dedicated structure that is the ERC Executive Agency, where I work here in Brussels. It is kind of success story, I would say, within the Horizon Europe. Not only because it gives total freedom to the applicant. So it's one of the few, together with the Marie Sklodowska-Curie actions, is one of the few that give complete freedom to the applicant to come up with research ideas that they think are worthy. Scientific excellence is also the sole criterion, so there are no requirement. It addresses individual scientists, so there's no requirement to have consortium either. There are no predetermined subjects, so it is completely bottom up. And it supports for frontier research in all fields of science and humanities with no quotas, so including social sciences and humanities. It is based also on an international peer review system that is a bit of a gold standard, also for other research councils at national level. So I hope what I'm I will explain to you today will also be useful for you for other kind of application. Yeah, next slide, please. I'm not sure whether we need to go through the figures. I'm not here to give you a propagandistic view of the ERC, just to say that it's a success story. Over 13,000 researchers funded with important spillovers in terms of also other researchers that are employed within these teams, etc., and prizes and medals, all awarded to ERC grantees. Okay, but we can move to the next one. This is maybe one of the few important tips that I'm giving to you. So we have a very important budget, especially for this research framework program. But as always, as you can see, so in the last 3 research framework programs, so the money is promised to us, we don't have it immediately. The ERC doesn't have it immediately in their pocket at the beginning of the framework program because the budget is not available, you know, that the parliament it changed, etc., etc. So as you can see, the budget is progressively more important, and it gets very important at the very end of the framework program. While with the applications, the number of applications is more or less stable. We experience always, I mean, it's impossible to foresee, of course, but we always experience a very high number of applications at the very beginning of the framework program because there are usually delays, so the calls are delayed significantly. But for the other year, it basically remains more or less stable. I mean, there are conjunctions and it changes depending on the subject that we cannot foresee nor manage, but this is not the point. But just to give you an idea, so if you now know that the budget is going to be increased at the end toward the final years of the framework program, so especially next year and the following one, while the number of applications is more or less stable, you will have understood by now that the success rate is rather remarkably higher toward the end of the framework program rather than at the beginning. Okay, so if you're now hesitating and thinking about putting together an application for the ERC, I would say the next year especially is a very good year. Okay. Strategically, and then all the rest, there's no strategies, but if there is one strategist, that is the one. Next slide, please. Okay. So here you can see, so success rates varies quite significantly according to host institution countries. Host institution is not an evaluation criterion, so applications are welcome from all over Europe and associated countries. We know that success rates so varies quite significantly. There's nothing to do with the nationality of the PIM themselves, but rather with, I would say, the support that researchers get at different institutions in different countries. We know, unfortunately, that conditions of labor within university are not equal across Europe. So you would see here there are countries that are much more successful than others. Okay. To next slide, please. An important spillover, I would say, of the ERC is that, yes, such as the same as with the Marie Sklodowska action, is that it has fostered, of course, internationalization. And as you can see there, that some countries are able through ERC grants to attract a lot of researchers, non-national researchers, to their institutions. Okay. And you see also that there are countries that are capable of attracting, while others are more giving up, I would say, unfortunately, talents and researchers to other countries. But this is something that is beyond our control. You can, move on to the next slide. Yeah. Here you see also the number of ERC projects funded by country and by domain. So there as well you can have, I mean, it's not a photograph, but you can see, that some countries are stronger in some domains rather than others. If you can move to the next one, please. Yeah, okay. So what does the ERC offers and why you should apply for an ERC grant? So the ERC offers independence, recognition, and visibility to work on a research topic of your own choice. So this is completely bottom up. To gain financial autonomy for 5 years. So these are relatively long-term grants that allows also to budget in for your own salary. So not only the one of team members, but also your own. It allows you also to negotiate the best condition of work within the host institution, because grants are portable, and we see that, you know, grantees take this as an opportunity also to speed their career and also to improve their position within their own institution. It allows you also to attract excellent team members and collaborators from anywhere in the world. So there are no restrictions in terms of the nationality of researchers that could collaborate with you should you get a grant. It allows you also to move with the grant to any EU member state or associated grantee. So grants are portable, and also institutions are not an evaluation criterion. So this we experience very frequently, that PIs decide to change country or host institution for either personal or professional opportunities, both at granting stage, so when they get the grant, but also during the duration of the project. You know, it's pretty common that people move. Thank you. Yeah. From anywhere in the world can apply. There are opportunities also for researchers that come from outside the EU. There's an additional startup funding for researchers moving to the EU. You can ask up to an extra €1 million, irrespective of the grant scheme. Grantees can keep the affiliation with the home institute outside Europe, but they need to work, this is the minimal legal requirement, at least 50% in Europe. Team members can be based outside Europe, so it does not impede any kind of collaboration outside of Europe. And grantees can move, again, these are portable grants, so you can move within the EU or associated countries, even during the duration of the grant. Next slide, please. Yes, I think you need to click on more. Yeah. Okay. We have, please, again, some more. I think, until we see. Yeah. So we have, the ERC is known for the 3 big individual calls and grant schemes that are the starting grant, which is aimed at early career researchers 2 to 7 years after the completion of the PhD, that offers up to €1.5 million over 5 years. The consolidator grant that is addressing consolidators, so mid-career researchers 7 to 12 years after the PhD, up to €2 million, and the advanced grant that is for more senior researchers and is offering up to €2.5 million. There are eligibility windows for the 2 early career calls in case of extended breaks, such as maternity leave, parental leave, learning illnesses, etc. Your eligibility window could be enlarged. Okay, so please check those rules out, because you might be still capable of applying, for instance, to starting grant if you had long career breaks. The synergy grants are a collaborative scheme that is addressing a small synergetic team of 2 to 4 principal investigators. It is a very generous scheme, up to €10 million for 6 years, and one of the 4 PIs can be based outside of the EU and associated countries. So this is the particularity of the synergy grant. Next slide, please. And yes, and then yes, oh, sorry, we have the proof of concept, which is addressing at marketable innovation of early stage results of researchers. So this is addressing at former ERC grantees that are willing to explore marketable potential of their own research results, which gives you a lump sum of, it's not very big, but it really allows you to have a first trial with your results. Okay, you can move to the next slide, please. So now I'll go into detail of how the ERC evaluation research works, and this is very important because, of course, that would allow you to understand how to prepare a good application. If you can, yeah, move to the next slide. Okay, so first of all, the ERC has a one-size-fits-all evaluation process that is addressing all fields of knowledge across the three domains: life sciences, physical sciences, engineering, and social sciences and humanities. Of course, for the sake of for being pragmatic, the evaluation panels are divided in 28 evaluation panels that are not static. I mean, we had recently this year the novelty of the SH8 panel within the social science and humanities domain that addresses cultural studies, cultural anthropologies, and the arts. Of course, we know that it's impossible to divide the whole field of knowledge in those artificial division of panels. This is why the panel structure is evolving. So please keep an eye. And this is, of course, the most important thing you should do is to, first of all, understand which panels you should apply to. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, here I have an overview of the social sciences and humanities where I work at the coordination of the SH6 panel, and the novelty this year is this new SH8 panels that stems from the former SH5. So we have now an SH5 panel that only deals with literary studies and philosophy, while the social anthropology, cultural studies, and all the studies of the arts are now gathered in this new SH8 panel. Yeah. So I think we lost the slide. Yeah, next one, please. Okay, so if you can click on more, because I think it's better if we see everything at once, since I'm not managing this. Thank you. Okay, so how does evaluation process works? As you know, for individual calls, we have a single submission procedure, but a two-step evaluation. It means that when you apply to the ERC, you prepare all your application that is composed of a part B1, a synopsis of your project, and the part B2, which is the detailed version of the whole project that you submit at the same time. But these two parts of the application are addressed at different stages. Step 1, the evaluation is based on the assessment of panel members only. So each of the 28 panel is composed of a set of 14, 15 to 20, up to 20 international experts in those fields, of course, that they gather in Brussels twice for the panel meeting, and that they also evaluate your proposal independently before the panel meeting. So at step 1, the evaluation process relies only on the assessment of internal panel members that are generalists. Okay, this is very important to know. They might not be specialized, of course. For instance, in my own panel, we have usually 18 panel members that cover millennia, you know, from archaeology, prehistory, up to very contemporary history. And of course, we cannot have experts in all fields and in all fields of studies and all approaches. But this is perfectly normal. We request panel members to really act as generalists, okay? And at step 1, they only see and assess part B1, which is a 5-page synopsis, so a summary of the application and your CV, okay? This is done for a very pragmatical reason, because the number of applications is too high and they don't have time to go into detail of all the panel meetings. So it's only done with the purpose of allowing the triage, I would say, okay? So skimming through the application and selecting only the one that are worth going to the second step. So panel members first assess your application independently. Usually there are 4 panel members that are allocated to your proposals. Most of the time, the closest one in terms of expertise. Of course, conflict of interest are taken into account. They are asked to assess the synopsis, so the summary of your application, 5-page synopsis. They come up with reviews, which are then circulated back to the whole panel, and then the whole panel meets in Brussels for a 1-week, very long and exhausting meeting, where they discuss all the application, and they grade applications, and they select the one that are scored A's that are retained for the second step, while they also reject quite a significant number, I would say 2/3 of the applications that are scored either B or C. So B means it's a good quality, but not good enough to go to the second step, and C means it really needs to be significantly reworked. So those proposals that are rejected, they do get feedback, and which is very important. Okay, this is why I think it is very important to apply, even though success rate is pretty low. I must say, you still get a very important feedback on the kind of research you're doing, on your own career path, and previous production, which I think it's always very important and I think constructive also and useful for your own research path. So the projects that are rejected get all these individual feedback and a final opinion from the panel that explain why the proposal has been rejected. But the proposal that gets to step 2, they don't get any feedback. They are sent both to panel member, but also to remote reviewers for a more detailed analysis and assessment of the whole application. Okay, so part B1, which include the synopsis and the CV, and part B2, which is the detailed 15-page long application. This is sent again to panel members. Most of the time, the one that selected, they assess it as step 1, but sometimes, I mean, there are changes in the location. But usually it's for closest panel members in terms of expertise within any given panel. And then these are sent to remote reviewers that are experts specialized in the specific field of the application and that are named by the panel during the step 1 panel meeting, okay? So applications are sent out to a very large number of experts. We then gather all the individual assessments, so both from the 4 internal panel members, but also from the external one. With all these reviews, the panel gather again in Brussels for the step 2 meeting, when proposals are again discussed, but applicants are also interviewed. Okay, and this is true for the 3 calls and even synergy. In the past, it used to be only early career researchers that used to be interviewed, but now it also applies to more senior one. So the step 2 panel meeting is a very long marathon of interviews for us, because we interview usually in my panel about 40 to 44 applicants over 4 days, and then the panel discusses and deliberates which proposals are worth being funding. And these are ranked, of course, because we don't have any infinite budget. But those that are better ranked and are considered of good quality, so that are scored 8, are retained, and they will get an invitation for the granting process. And the other ones that are rejected, they'll get a B, but they can reapply the following year. So the grade you get during the application has also implication in terms of the possibilities to reapply and resubmission restriction. If you get rejected at step 1, you will have to wait out 1 year if you get a B, or 2 years if you get a C. And this is done with a double purpose, not only not to overburden panels with non-competitive application, but also to allow researchers to integrate and applicants to integrate the feedback from the panel and come up with an improved version of the application. While if you're rejected at step 2, so if you go to step 2, you are sure that no matter whether you're funded or not, you will be able to reapply immediately the following year. So there are no resubmission restriction if you get to step 2. Okay, next slide, please. So how does the proposal structure is? So it reflects basically what I explained, the 2-step application. So there will be a part A that is in administrative forms, include the budget. It's very important that you, I mean, this is a very technical part that you cannot do on your own. It is very important that you rely on the research offices of your own institution, because you do need help, important help in figuring out how much money you need and which, how much costs each budget line. And also you need a letter of acceptance by your own institution. And then it doesn't mean that you need to have a permanent position within the host institution. So it's just an agreement of the institution to host you in case you are granted the okay. Then there's a part B1 that is the extended synopsis. It's the 5-page summary of the whole application, plus the CV and track record, and this is up to 4 or 5 pages in total. Okay. The novelty as of this year is that you're not only required to give a standard CV, but you're also allowed to explain your track record, explain your research path, present your biggest results so far, and also yourself as a person. So there's a narrative presentation of that you make of yourself that is also included in this synopsis. Okay. Then part B2, it is the real scientific proposal. It is 14 pages long. It includes the state of the art and objective, but also an extended view of the methodology. Okay. Then you would need a host institution support letter and, of course, your PhD certificate. Okay, next slide, please. So the only evaluation criterion, this is particularity of the ERC, this excellence is the only evaluation criteria. Now, of course, excellent means everything and nothing, so it depends very much on the discipline you're working in. It used to be 50% excellence of the project, and if you can, yeah, I think there's something that is missing here. Can you click on more? Yeah. So it used to be 50% the assessment, 50% on the research project, and 50% on the principal investigator. But now things have been changed. The scientific council has decided that it's much more important to value the groundbreaking nature, the scientific impact, and the scientific approach of the research project itself, which weight more rather than your career. So my first advice would be, don't think that you are not ready, that you are not up to the standard. So don't apply self-censorship to yourself because just you don't think you are not good enough compared to other applicants. The most important thing the panel will look at is the excellence of your research idea. Okay. Next slide, please. There are other novelties in this ERC working program 2024. So first thing is the focus is mainly on research. It used to be the case already, I have to tell you the truth, but now this has been formalized by the Scientific Council. Okay, so the assessment will be primarily on your research idea. There is no prescriptive profiles of the PI, so you can present up to 10 research outputs. And you can explain, you're also given an opportunity to explain why these are important to you through a short narrative. You can also explain why you had either career breaks or diverse paths. And of course, all of this is welcome. Okay, so don't think that you need to have already a Nobel Prize to apply for an ERC. It is really not the case. Okay, your idea counts much more. The other novelty is that the Scientific Council decided to put a cap to the number of applications that can go to step 2. So now we have a maximum, of course, this is for feasibility reasons, of 44 proposals that can be interviewed and assessed at step 2. But there's a possibility of having a not invited category, so proposal that would be worth being passed to step 2, but the numbers don't allow it. And for those proposals, there are no resubmission restriction either. Okay. The other novelty is that in the advanced grant this year, we will introduce the lump sum. So one and only amount payment based on the work done. Okay. And I don't actually see the last, wait a sec. Okay, and of course I told you as well, so there's new panel in SH, in the SH domain, the social science and humanities domain, and there are changes in the descriptors of the LS3 and LS5 panel. So please have a look at these because every year the panel structure can be adapted according to the needs. Okay. Okay, so the calendar is public and is available on our website. You can only see the dates for the 2024 work program now, but dates for 2025 will be published shortly. For now, so starting grant and consolidator grants have already expired, but the new ones are coming up soon. The advanced grant, there's still is still possible to apply up until end of August, and same goes with proof of concept. Yeah. So there are 2 deadlines per year. Next slide, please. So how to prepare a successful application? I'll try to give you some tips given my experience in having read by now hundreds of applications and seen hundreds of evaluations. So next slide. So first, of course, you shouldn't underestimate the time that it takes to come up with a good and potentially successful application. So please get informed, get acquainted with our rules. Everything is available on our website. Of course, the most important thing is that you have an idea, so that you know what you want to do, and that you develop that idea, of course. Then you should figure out which grant you are eligible to apply to, so either the starting grant, the consolidated grant, and advanced grant, and please take into account the eligibility windows for career breaks. Don't be too scared about also the need to apply to, for instance, the consolidated grant or the advanced grant. We do have data. The success rate is virtually flat across the 3 calls. There are no major gaps in terms of career stage. Your career stage is taken into account by the panel when assessing your idea and your career. So of course, even if you were not eligible anymore for the starting grant call, I mean, consolidated grants are more, the process is identical and the quality is not particularly higher, and same goes for the advanced grants. I mean, for the grants, the success rate is much lower in terms that the bulk of the ERC budget is given to starting grant and consolidated grant. And this is done, really, it's a political decision of the Scientific Council to favor early career researchers rather than most senior one, also because we know that synergy is attracting a lot of very senior researchers. So to counterbalance that, the most of the individual grants are and budget are given to starting grant and consolidated grant. That's also where the number of application is very high. But in terms of quality, you shouldn't be scared of in case you need to apply to one of these most senior one. Okay, it's in terms of the research idea is what counts, and your career stage will be taken into account when assessing you as a PI. You need to, of course, I mean, as I told you before, the panel structure is an artificial one. So, of course, in case your application, your field of research falls in between 2 of the panels, you can choose also across panels or across domain to point out more than 1 panel. Of course, you should pick the closest one. Where you feel you belong, and the panel then might also, the panel chairs might also transfer your proposal to other panels in case they deem that the application would be better evaluated somewhere else. But please have a look at the panel structure, and the most important thing is that you figure out which domain and which panel to apply to. Then, of course, you should devote a great amount of time and energy to writing your application. So putting together part B1 and part B2, get acquainted with the system, prepare all the annexes, and submit on time. So there are always, most of the people submit at the very last moment, but trust me, the system itself is not user-friendly. So please, my first advice would be do not wait until the very last moment, because there are always bugs and problems. It's always better to, of course, get prepared much earlier, okay? And so to prepare your proposal, of course, consult all the documents, check the availability windows and the resubmission restriction in case you have already applied before. Register early and have all your documentation ready. Get the written consent of your collaborator. So this is a basic thing, but please keep in mind that at step 2, your proposal will be sent out to people that work exactly on what you work. So it happens all the time, now and again, that there are people that are named as collaborators that are not even aware of this potential collaboration, and that are then asked to assess your application. And believe me, they do get offended and then biased against your application. So do the work well, do the homework, contact everyone and get their consent before naming them. Avoid name dropping, okay? It is really, it backfires, okay? Simple email exchange is okay, but in case you haven't contacted them, we will get back to you, okay? You can contact us and ask for your question. There's a dedicated mailbox for each call. But of course, the most important thing, except for all these technicalities, is to have a bright original idea, is to design your research project, to implement that idea, and to consider the balance between addressing generalists as step 1 and specialists as step 2, and the difference between part B1 and part B2 of the written proposal. This is maybe the most difficult part in terms of rhetoric and of style, also on how So of course, my first advice would be to start from the part B2, which is your real proposal that is addressing people that are knowledgeable in what you do. Okay, so it should be specialized, go into details of the methodology, the sources, the experimentation, whatever you want to do, to explain how you want to carry out your idea, but also to explain the importance of the idea. And then, of course, you need to come up with your calling card somehow is the part B1, okay? Because unless part B1 is very solid, no one will ever look at part B2. And part B1 is very tricky to write, in my opinion, because you need to address generalists. So you need to convince people that might not be exactly in your field, might not specialize in your field, you need to convince them of the originality and importance of your research idea. You need to explain your challenges, but also reassure them that what you want to do is feasible, because feasibility is also assessed as step 1. So it's important that you convince them already in part B1, find a good balance in between, like an introduction of your proposal, but also already giving it all the important information that the panel needs in order to see whether not only your research idea is worth being carried out, but also if it can be carried out, okay? It's very important that you seek for feedback, okay? This is what we know. Successful applicants go through a very substantial help from feedback, not only from close colleagues that work with them, but also from people that are not so close to what they're doing. For instance, if you're working on contemporary economic history, it's important to send out your proposal not only to people that work exactly in contemporary economic history, but maybe to an early modernist one, or to someone who works in contemporary history, but in a totally different field, because you need to keep in mind that different profiles will have a look at your research and a proposal, and they need to be able, you need to be able to convince them, so to explain them why it is important what you want to do, okay? We also know that successful applicants go through mock interviews, have their proposal proofread. All of this is standard treatment in some institutions that have very strong research offices. It is very difficult to have if you come from other countries that are a bit less supportive of early career researcher in preparing applications. But please mobilize all your network and try and do it yourself if the institution is not doing it for yourself, because this is very important, okay? The other very basic suggestion is, if you're rejected, please keep trying, because we know that reapplication have a much higher success rate. We also know, and I can tell you, that panels take this seriously, so that the feedback you get from the panel is valuable, both for resubmitting, but also to advance on your own research. Next slide, please. So in step 1, you need to keep in mind you're addressing panel member, that they only see part B1 of the proposal. In part B1, you need to find the right balance in between explaining why your proposal is innovative, why it is going beyond the state of the art. It is important that you don't present an incremental research, including your previous work. So it is important that you explain why this is also advancing what you have already done until now, that you're capable of doing, that you know the subject, but also that you're taking a step forward, okay? It's important that you outline honestly the state of play, including competitors. Be honest and avoid overstatements. So for those of you who might get the help of consultants, they might tell you that you need to sell yourself, saying that you're best one, that you're the first one who's doing this, that this is the most important work ever, that no one else has done it. Please don't follow this silly advice. The people that are assessing you are people like you, and this kind of, hyperbolic jargon really gets on the nerves, so it backfires. So if I were you, I would really try to be as honest as possible. Keep in mind so that these people are people like you, okay? It is important that you explain if what you want to do is feasible and realistic. So it's important that you think about risk, that you justify the scope and the case studies, in case you're focusing on case studies, including sources and data. So it's important that in part B1, although it's very short, that you absolutely convince them and don't leave any blind spot. So you need to put everything in a summary that is somehow vulgarizing, I don't know, really try to addressing people that are not expert in what you're doing, but try to provide them with all the necessary information for them to be convinced that the application is strong and that the research idea is worth being investigated. You need, of course, be concise and clear. Again, be aware of using too much jargon or buzzword. In step two, part B1 and B2 and the budget are evaluated by both panel members and remote referees. So it's very important, since especially remote referees will read everything as a continuum. So they will read part B1 and then will read part B2. Please avoid to have repetition and copy and paste section from the synopsis. It is very tedious for them. It is not serious. We're then not sure that they then carry on reading really through the whole application. So it's very important that you consider part B2 as an independent document, but also complementary to part B1. Okay. There you will need to present a detailed state of the art, a detailed and extensive methodology and work plan. It is important that you state, for instance, collaborators, if you already know with whom you want to collaborate or who you want to hire. But if you come from those countries, there are a lot of countries where you cannot actually, because these are open competition or supposedly so, you cannot name potential collaborators that you're planning to hire. Please at least describe clearly what kind of expertise you're looking for. Okay, so it's important that you show them that you're really mastering the team already and the idea of the work plan already now. Please provide risk mitigation strategies in terms what you're doing is risky, which is something good. It's not bad per se, but just explain that you are aware of the risk and that you have mitigation strategies. Explain the involvement of team members or the needed expertise, again, in case you cannot name them. And justify the requested resources. Do not inflate the budget. Start from your needs. So if there's one piece of information and advice that you should take back home from my intervention, is to do exactly the opposite of what the research offices of your institution will tell you to do. So they will tell you have 1.5 million euros in starting grant, for instance. What can you do with 1.5 million euros? This is a bad strategy. We see a lot of applications that are good research idea, they're just inflated, they just make bigger, and they're not solid because they're just out of scope. Please avoid this inflation. You need to start from what you want. So if I were you, I would say, I would go to the research offices of your home institution, say, I want to do this. And in order to carry out this brilliant idea of mine, I would need 2, 3, or maybe less, because actually the team dimension is not compulsory. Yeah? So we have very successful application with very small teams. Imagine you need 1 PhD or 1 postdoc, 1 collaborator, 1 research assistant, whatever you need. And then you need to ask to the host institution, how much does this cost? Does this fit within the scope and the budget available in this grant? Okay, but don't do the opposite. Otherwise, you're really shooting on your own foot. Next slide, please. So typical reason for rejection, as all the application procedures where proposals are basically selected through rejecting the weakest one, you need not only to convince the panel that what you want to do is worth being done, but also not to leave any blind spot. Okay, so don't give them reason for reservations. Okay. So the typical reason for rejection is when it's incremental research, so you're basically proposing to do what you've been doing for the last 5 to 10 years, okay, or something that has already been done by others. So originality is something that is really valued and important. In case the research scope is either too narrowly focused or too broad to unfocused, and this is particularly true for those proposals that try to put up, increase to reach the maximum amount of budget and put extra case studies or extra collaborators just to make it bigger, it doesn't work. In case the hypothesis, objectives, and work plan are insufficiently clear, so you need to be very clear from the beginning. In case the work plan is not detailed enough or unclear, in case there is insufficient risk management, or for interdisciplinary proposal, expertise is missing in one area. So it's very important that you show that you master all the risk and the challenges involved in what you want to do. For the principal investigator, insufficient track record or insufficient potential for independence. And it's very important, not so much what or where you have published, but that you show them that you are capable of independent thinking and also of mastering a team, okay? Or the other reason for rejection, of course, is the poor interview or not addressing the question for those that go through the interview. Okay, some of the myths that are there, we know that there are a lot of urban legends that I would love to demystify to you. So first of all scientific fields are eligible for ERC funding. There are no predetermined priorities. So whatever you want to do, we'll find a panel that will assess it and consider it seriously. The ERC panel structure and also the panel descriptors do not represent priorities. So really, we don't have any priority, okay? So you please come up with whatever you want to do. Don't try to find strategies in hot themes or hot disciplines, okay? The other thing is that the budget is distributed among panel as a function on depending on the demand. So it really depends on how many applications we get that the money is given. Again, there is no priority across the 3 fields or the panels. The host institution is not an evaluation criteria. So it doesn't matter where you sit, doesn't matter where you want to go, as long as it makes sense scientifically to be there or personally, this is fine. Societal impact is not an evaluation criteria, which does not mean that our projects do not have such an impact. Some have, but it's not important, contrary to other pillars of the EU research funding. It is not important that you show there is some kind of political, societal, economic impact in your research. It is good if it has, but we, the ERC, funds and address fundamental research. So for us, this is not a requirement, okay? Proposals shorter than 5 years are equally welcome. So you don't need to reach the maximum if what you want to do is very concise. I mean, there's no need to reach for the maximum always. The content of the proposed research determines its budget. So once again, please don't inflate it. The applicant's career stage and context matter. So you can explain what your local conditions are. Okay, for instance, some of you might be in an institution where they have already supervised PhD students, graduate students, etc., or have already managed some limited or important research budget. In other contexts, in other countries, we know, again, that conditions of labor are not equal across European universities, and this is perfectly fine. So what you need to do is be honest with the panel and explain that. For instance, explain that you never had PhD students to supervise because the institution where you are does not allow it, but that, for instance, you have informally had teaching appointments or other kind of team collaboration that show that you are now capable not only to carry out your own research, but also to supervise other people's work. The publication record, again, is not decision for funding decision. You can explain which are the outputs that are more important in your career, and you have a space to explain why. And having already an ERC grant does not guarantee obtaining or not obtaining another one. Each proposal is evaluated on its own merits in comparison, of course, with the competing pool of applications. Next slide, please. So where can you find more information? You can find it, of course, in our website. There's a dashboard where we can look for other proposals that are funded in your field. You can filter by discipline, by panel, by country. But there are also videos that are that are available on YouTube that are done by a colleague of mine, so a scientific officer that explain you, really take you hand through all the process of the ERC. They explain you what to consider before applying, how to fill in the application. They explain you how to go through the interviews and give you tips about a successful interview and how the evaluation works. Okay, you can, all of this is available on our website and YouTube. It's a very important to have a look at it. Okay, so I think I was too long. There you can also see the emails in case you want to reach to the coordination teams. And I think that's it. If you can move on to the next slide. Yeah, that's it. Or you can feel free also to reach out to me directly. That's it. From my side, are there questions on your side?
Thank you so much, Flavia, for the presentation. It was, I mean, I attended an ERC, it was a different discipline, and I noticed how many things changed in the past calls. Because, for example, I remember there used to be like the rating A, B, C, and D, and if you will get a D, you will be banned for 2 years, I think, and now it's changed.
No, now we never had a D actually, so we still have a C. If you get a C at step 1, you still banned for 2 years. This is still the case. So,
okay.
but again, except for that, I think you get very useful feedback. So it's really worth trying. Yeah.
Okay,
I'm not
so
saying that it's not it's a tough selection, huh? Competition is tough, but I think it's worth going through the process. Yeah.
we're talking about the grants of the grant, so
Yeah.
I think competition
Yeah.
should be fierce.
Yeah.
If we have any questions from the audience, please feel free to raise up your hands or drop a message on the chat. During a while, what I can do is I have a few suggestions myself, because I just finished 2 weeks ago my last grant, and I was considering applying for an ERC myself. And I can tell you that some countries will have a micro grants to prepare an application. So check at your local countries or local institutions. Also, I have a question actually regarding the budget, if no one else has another question. It is possible to allocate some budget for unexpected events.
No.
Okay.
But you no, but you can I'm not saying inflating, but be generous in some budget lines. And when in case you need to change the budget, I mean, once you have the grant, you're free to do whatever you want with those with that budget. So you can shift money from one budget line to the other we don't micromanage the grant so much. Okay, so once of course, you need to report back to us at mid-stage, both financially and scientifically, what your advancement were. But except for that, we give you freedom to use the budget as you see fit. So for some budget lines, it's very important to think generously. I'm thinking, for instance, in terms of publication costs, because open access is a requirement, it's an obligation, so don't underestimate that. So for publication, it's important that you think very big in terms of budget. And then but you can have very different budget lines. For instance, travel ones in case you need to go for field works. So I mean, there are very different budget lines, but you need to justify each and every of these entries. Yeah.
Okay, we have 2 questions from the audience. So Elisabetta Ganepa, she's asking, can you please explain, again, how we can justify we couldn't supervise PhD students, for example, due to our research environment? And the second question that I got from Giuseppina Scala, it is possible to receive the PowerPoint presentation? We are working on that because currently some data is sensitive. So we'll be sending an email or maybe a banned version of it later on.
Yeah, so I'll send you a PowerPoint, no, not a PowerPoint, the PDF version without the budget, because the budget cannot be made public. But I'll send it to you, and then you feel free to distribute it to everyone. Please don't put it on YouTube again and things like this, because we don't allow it. But except for that, I mean, for your members, it's absolutely fine. So research management experience, previous experience. We know that some applicants don't have such an experience, supervision, for instance, of graduate students. Others do have it. I think it's important that you play honest with the panel and explain, in case you didn't have it, that it's not your fault, that these opportunities were not allowed to you or present in the research environment in which you have been working so far. But it's important that also you try to convince them that you are now ready, especially for starting round. This is really addressing early career researchers. So as the name indicates, it should be a first opportunity for you to have your own team and supervise other people's work. So I think it's important that you show to the panel that you can master this kind of challenges. That is also important that you show that, for instance, you had previous collaboration experiences, be it the, I don't know, organization of conferences or colloquias, or other, your role in some research networks, associations, etc., or also informal involvement with colleagues, informal supervision or things like this. I think it's important that you try to convince the panel that although those opportunities were not available to you, you are still active in those in that respect. Yeah, somehow.
Yeah, I think that's
and that
very
you feel
fair.
confident. That you feel confident that you know, this is the opportunity to take a step forward in that direction. Yeah.
I think that's very nice because, as you said, and I've seen that even when I was doing my PhD, like some of the fellows in different countries, they will be allowed or even obliged to do teachings, while others were not even allowed. So
yeah,
I think that's very nice. We have another question from Anna Vido. She's asked, if we defend our PhD just 7 years ago, we can no longer apply for the study grant, can we? Because I haven't understand that 1st of January thing pretty well. So if you can explain again.
No, so it's 7 years. It's 7 years after PhD. But in case you had career breaks, any kind of career breaks due to health reason or maternity leaves or parental leaves, those are taken into account. Okay, so especially for female applicants, each kids allow you for an extension of the eligibility window up to 18 months.
18 months.
Yeah, 18 months. So this is considerable. So please have a look at the rules, because the eligibility window can be considerably extended. Yeah.
Okay, we have a couple of questions more. As the first application, can we apply for a proof of concept funding?
No, proof of concept is only addressing previous grantees. So you need to have an ERC grant first, and towards the end of the project, not even at the beginning, of course, toward the midterm of your project, then you can already apply for a proof of concept. But this is also for research results that are stemming from ERC funded research.
Okay, we have a question from Murad Gunesh. Company creation is considered as a career break?
It's
like
not considered,
up?
not for the eligibility itself. So it doesn't allow you to extend eligibility windows if you had other experience out of academia, but this is personally fine. And if you, I think you should be honest with the panel and put that forward and explain them why it makes sense in your path, but also why there might be consequences in terms of previous research outputs and productivity. Please do explain so, because these things are taken into account. Yeah.
Okay, and for the 7 years period, no, it doesn't.
No.
It doesn't allow you a career break, Murat.
No.
And we have a very long question here, so thank you very much for this.
But again,
wonderful...
sorry, and I know that all of you are freaking out with the possibility of applying to consolidator grant. Believe me, the quality of the project is exactly the same. So it's not, if you need to apply to consolidator grants, and the numbers are even lower. So to tell you the truth, I'm not sure whether starting grant is so much easier than consolidator grant. I don't think so. So
well, I mean, if you're saying that the funding is split in the number of applications, I will guess like the same percentage more or less should be the same for one or the other.
Yeah. Don't self-censorship yourself and saying I'm not up to the following level, because it's not the same. Yeah, it's not the case. Yeah.
Okay, so question 1 from Sabina. How many panel members read B1 and B1 plus B2?
Okay,
so was it 44?
Four panel member read part B1 and 4 panel member, most of the time the same, not always, depends on the balance, read B2. And externals, we send it to up to 15 people, and then it depends on who accepts, okay? So 15 names, you have an opportunity to name up to 3 people that you don't want to get reviewed from. If you have rivalries, for instance, okay, you can exclude up to 3 competitors or whatever in your field. This is fine. But otherwise, really be careful on who you name as previous or potential collaborators, because these people, if they are knowledgeable in what you do, they might be the people we are sending it to. Yeah.
Okay. Does the possibility of a startup funding of additional 1 million also? No, it does not apply to the Marie Curie Global Fellowships.
No.
No. Is it possible to budget an instrument in an associated country that will be needed for conducting research?
Yes. So there's an extra 1 million euro that is valid for all the calls. So it's 1 million for starting grant, COG, and advance, that you can ask for exceptional costs that are, for instance, startup costs moving back to Europe. For instance, if you want to even move a laboratory from elsewhere to Europe, but also in case you want to buy facilities, reserve equipment or facilities, or if you want to have access to some facilities. Fieldwork is also covered, I'm thinking, for instance, for archaeologists. So all these kind of costs can be budgeted in the extra 1 million. Yeah, including equipment, including tools, including lab facilities, etc. Yeah.
Okay. We have a last
Of course,
question.
you need to justify why you want it, why you need it, because they might say, why do you need one extra? I'm not saying, I don't know, inventing things. This kind of tool, if you already have one in your institution, of course, there's portability, but you need to justify why you need one, to work individually and independently on. Yeah.
Okay, we have I think, last question, and then I will have a quick question and we can close. If I have done a postdoc in another country, will it affect the evaluation of the ERC grant?
No, absolutely. So host institution is not, I have to tell you the truth. Mobility, international mobility is not a requirement. We insist very much. And again, it is not a proxy for excellence. Doesn't mean that you need to have had experience abroad to be an excellent candidate. It is, of course, valued. So PIs and applicants are not penalized for not having had mobility experience, for instance, although it is usually appreciated, this kind of experience. You need to explain, even imagine you have only worked in the place where you studied at undergraduate level when you have never moved from the same institution. I mean, this is perfectly fine. You need at least to explain to the panel that you have been engaged with discussions in your scientific community across countries. So this is important, that you expose the results of your work through collaboration or through other experiences also in an international arena. I think this is something that is standard by now, but this is not a requirement for you to have already moved somewhere else. No, it is appreciated usually. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So we have again, they're repeating the same questions. The non-sensitive a version with non-sensitive data of the PowerPoint will be circulated. The recording probably will be made available only for MCAA members, because as Flava stated, we cannot share this information or this presentation by public channels. And of course, currently unemployed can apply for the ERC. And my last question is about the very, very beginning, where you say something about you can put your own salary. But I guess that there are some limitations and regulations according to countries and institutions.
I mean, it depends on your institution. So this is why also, I mean, the ERC has had an effect in terms of brain drain within Europe. I mean, there's some countries that are able to attract, that we see, salaries are just higher. So people move to countries where the conditions of labor are better, but it also allows you to, and that we see, so we see people that at granting stage, they move the project somewhere else because they have a better condition, so they can better negotiate with the host institution, either to have a permanent position or to have higher salaries. Some institutions do allow it, others don't, but this is okay for us if you find, I mean, it's your own game.
Okay, Flavia, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. I mean, to me, it was very, very interesting because, as I said, I was considering, I still don't know what I'm going to do with my life. It's been so recent. But
one advice, do try, give it a try, okay? Don't be scared. Don't put yourself out of the game. You never know. And I think, you learn a lot from the process anyway.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for attending. We will be sending a follow-up email with the details about the PDF version and probably a link to access. So thank you for joining.
Great.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Good luck with everyone. Bye-bye.